Hello. Today's live stream is just going to be a continuation of yesterday's because yesterday's got cut off by the storm. So I'm just going to resume on the page right before the one I stopped at, and if you missed yesterday's or whatever, we will upload a complete version with both parts, the whole thing. It's very long, so this live and the live streams will probably be split into three parts anyway. Um, Today's still part one though because yesterday's got cut off by the storm, unfortunately. But like I said, yesterday I read the motion, and I'll have that on YouTube soon. But we're just gonna continue on with Sara Yousuf's transcripts, and I'm gonna start on question. Doesn't say which. I'm just gonna start on the question before the one that I ended at. Okay. Question. She's a second year, 2003 or 2004, something like that. You're a second year. She's a first year, roughly '04. You became quick friends? That's right. Okay. And then, maybe it was '03, I think. Anyway, right around there. Did you maintain that friendship? Or, I mean, tell me the depth or the scope of the friendship, I guess. Sure. So we were very close friends. I think for 13 years. So 2000 and say, I think it was '03 to 2017. We were, and I consider us very close friends. I was at her wedding. She was at my first wedding. We lived in the same apartment complex. We saw each other when she was in Miami because she did move to Tallahassee and had a summer, Was away quite a bit during the summer in different places. But she and I think I was thanked in her book, if I remember correctly. We, met up one time when in Montreal. Like, we saw each other quite a bit. I had been to her place in Tallahassee many times. She had stayed the night at one of my places in Miami once. She had moved to Tallahassee a couple times. I would consider us close friends, and I had been to Thanksgiving at the Adelsons' residence on a few occasions, and been to their residence for different holidays and events, and I had been to Charlie Adelson's residence on Whale Harbor on 2 or 3 occasions. Okay, so I guess then let me fast forward all the way to the end, and we'll plug in what's in between. So why are you not friends, and or why are you a witness in this case? I'm not friends with Wendi because I ended the friendship by email in 2017 for a few reasons. The primary reason was that her situation was bringing a lot of chaos into her life and my life because I was close friends with her and the stress of the situation was becoming something that I absorbed. Sure. And part of that was not through her fault at all. Just a lot of media attention and a lot of instability was happening. And I was at a point in my life where things were difficult. I had just gone through a separation and so I was finding that that was a lot for me to take on. I also disapproved of the way I believed that she was protecting her family, that she knew she was involved in the case. I also didn't approve of some of the choices she was making. Like, I felt like she was being misleading to a lot of the people she was dating and making guys feel like they were the only one when they weren't. And those are the primary reasons. I mean, if you're asking the reasons why and it was a very hard thing for me to do. I sent her an email and I said I needed space from this friendship. And at the time, I needed space. And once I had the space, I didn't want to be friends with her anymore. Okay, the misleading guys into thinking that they were the only ones. So, I mean, am I characterizing it correctly that you're observing someone, a friend, who's in the dating world, and you may be in the same circle of people or whatnot. As a result, if she's playing both sides of the fence, so to speak, and she's not being honest with any of them, eventually that circles back to you because you're in the same circle of people. Am I saying all of that right? Right. I didn't want to have cover. Yeah, I got you. That you disapproved of her acceptance of family or acceptance of family that she knew was involved in the case. Explain that to me. Well, I can get into the specific examples of what she said if that's helpful. I don't know if you want to go in chronological order or just if you want to focus on a topic, we can focus on this topic, whatever you prefer. No, I mean go in chronological order, that's fine. Okay, well then, I guess you just got into sort of how we met and how our friendship developed. Do you want to feel free to ask if you have any questions about the marriage or the time immediately after the murder, if we want to stay kind of chronological? Yeah, why don't we? Whatever enables you to tell the story, I guess, that you need to tell in this environment. I mean, you've been in my shoes before, so I'm interested in what you have to say, not what I have to ask. Okay, so after Dan was murdered, and I was aware that it was a highly contentious divorce, she did email me some of the motions that Dan had filed. She talked a lot about how difficult Dan was to be married and to, and even worse, to be divorced from. I remember Wendi calling me the day that Dan was murdered and telling me that she had just, Dan had been shot. We don't think he's gonna make it. I just had the worst moments of my life telling the boys they don't have a father anymore. And when that news hit, I was so. Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you there for a moment. You blipped out on me. If I can. Yeah, go ahead, go back. Yeah, back up just a bit. So she's had the worst day of her life, and then go ahead. Oh, I was just extremely shocked, shaken, terrified. I felt, deeply disturbed by what had happened. And so she came to Miami a couple of days later and asked my ex husband and I to come to her parents' house, to her parents' condo, to kind of just give her a hug, give her support, sit there with her while she, grieves and processes everything. So we did. So a few days after the murder, we were at, I don't know the name, one of the big condo buildings on South Beach, just talking to her, hugging her, and sitting with her. Who's your ex, if I can ask? Sure, his name is Kier, Kiar. Last name is redacted, like the country. Okay, contact info? I don't have it. We have not had any communication since 2016. I don't think he's a hard person to find. He lived in Plantation for some time. Okay, Plantation, Florida. But I haven't been in touch with him since 2016, so I don't have anything updated for you, sorry. Okay, so the two of you went over to the condo and carry on. Yeah, she was crying and devastated and shaking, and her mind was going in all sorts of directions, which I think is understandable when somebody has been in her situation. But one thing that she kept repeating was, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. And Wendi kept repeating this? Yes, she did. And I, at the time, was a public defender. I think I might have been a senior or a trainer, but I was handling with my mentor a case involving a wrongful conviction, and that was where most of my mental energy was going at the time, was that wrongful conviction. So I thought at the time that Wendi was referring to a possibility of a wrongful conviction. A wrongful conviction. So was she saying, I'm going to prison, sorry? Meaning that, she's the natural suspect as the ex wife and she's afraid of things going Ari and, her not getting fair process and people suspecting ultimately, likely, her getting wrongfully convicted of this murder. That's what I thought. I thought people would suspect her. Information she was afraid that information would be wrongfully pieced together, especially with her and Dan's acrimonious history, right? I thought that's what she was sort of alluding to. And okay, so I mean, obviously you're telling this story as if you're looking at it in hindsight. Now you're looking at it as if you drew the incorrect conclusions at the time. But that was a conclusion that you drew back then when she says, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. It's because she's obviously going to be a suspect because she's the ex. And then there's been an acrimonious or contentious relationship, but you draw the conclusion. What else happens? Carry on. During that conversation, my ex husband, who is black, sort of kept responding to her like, Wendi, do you even know how white you are? Like, it's not happening. And that, it was just kind of the way that he would sometimes like joke, and that was the point he sometimes made. So he was trying to reassure her that it's not happening with your demographics. Okay, and then does that meeting come to an end, or is there another chronological circumstance? I don't have any other, like, specific memories from that meeting. Okay. So we can go to the next thing in what I think is chronological order. I'm just doing my best to keep it in chronological order for you. Soon after that, Wendy's eldest son has a birthday party, and my ex-husband and I are invited. She invited a lot of her friends, and it was at her parents' condo, and she invited a lot of her friends. We all brought presents. We knew that this child had just lost their father, his father, and everybody brought like a Lego kit for him and tried to make it a good day for him. Are you thinking this is 2014, 2015, or 2016? It was shortly after the murder. It was within, so the murder was in 14? Correct. It was in 14? Yes, it was 14. I was like, okay. And probably end of July or early August. I don't know when the birthday was, but it was summer. And this is the only information I have about Donna Adelson. But at some point, I went to the kitchen and the kitchen area. It was an open plan condo, and Donna was in the kitchen, and it appeared like she had just read something or seen something, I don't know, on her phone, computer, or newspaper or something. But she was already on topic that I had kind of walked into, and she said, you know, they're talking about him like he was a beloved professor, but you know something, he was a jerk. Okay, that's what you heard Donna say? Yes. Okay. Who was she? Who was the audience? Who was she talking to? Me. Me. She kind of looked up as I walked into the kitchen. Oh, okay. But I mean, you said that you walked in the midst of what you thought was like a train of thought or a conversation, and then I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it was a conversation. I think she was reading something or looking at something, like she might have been reading a newspaper or online or something. Sure. But I don't think there was another person involved. Okay. And I mean, did you know Danny Markel? Yes. Did you know him through Wendi? Yes. By virtue of the marriages? I mean, I remember when she first went on a date with Danny, she reported back to me about that, so. And I knew Danny when he had, kind of first come to visit her, and, well, Donna's gonna feel comfortable, sure, interacting with you and sharing her feelings about circumstances because you had a long involvement in family and relationships. Yeah, and I didn't know. So her looking up and saying that to you, I guess what's abnormal about it or strange about it? To me, what's abnormal about it is that he had just died, and in most cultures and most sort of societal expectations, we don't speak ill about the dead, so soon after. Sure. So to me, it conveys an outsized and inappropriate anger, considering that he would have never bothered anyone again. That's my understanding. By Mr. Morris. So the remark seemed out of place to you from that sense. Do you really say things like that so quickly after somebody has died? Right, yes. Okay, did Donna say, what was your response to it? I don't remember what my response was. I don't think it was much. I knew Danny was very difficult and confrontational, and that Donna was protective of her child. So I don't think I was going to. I don't expect that I would have said much, but I don't remember. I don't have a specific memory. You didn't particularly care for Danny, though, either, did you? It was really mixed. I didn't particularly care for Danny a lot of the time, but I also could see over the course of all those years that, like, for example, he would do nice things. Like, he would, see an article he thought was interesting. I might be interested in it and send it to Wendi to send to me. Like, I could see that he was, he had a good heart and that he was, like, a great dad, but no, I wouldn't have chosen him as a personal friend. I thought that he was really confrontational and high conflict and talked about his own accomplishments much more than he took interest in other people. Sure. And the difficult thing that I have is I've got the state potentially using you as a witness who says, this kind of caught me off guard that she's not respectful for the dead. But then I've got to be able to explain the context within which it's being said. And she didn't like Danny. She'd gone through a terrible divorce with her daughter with Danny, and you lived part of that. And so I'm not sure that her statement is as meaningful in her being prosecuted for a homicide as it might be. I don't know, but that part's not up to me. I'm just telling you. I get that. But so beyond Donna making that comment to you, I guess, what else, if anything, did Donna say or do that day? I have no other testimony related to Donna Adelson that I can offer. Okay, other than that, one comment that Danny wasn't a nice person. Yes, that one that I testified to, yeah. Okay, but carry us forward then, I guess, with chronologically as it relates to Wendi. Okay, and I have some other information related to Charlie as well. Please. So, over the course of the next year after the homicide, Wendi didn't bring up the homicide very much at all. myself and other members of our social group were very interested in, like, not, I won't say it all. That's probably an exaggeration, but not much. And so on few occasions I brought up, like, what's going on with the investigation? What have the police learned? Did they find out anything more? And she told me on a few different occasions, like, oh, the police suspect one of his former students. The police suspect somebody related to a case he was working on in New York. The police suspect, you know, I think those were the two, oh, his new girlfriend's ex-husband. Those were the three scenarios she did present to me as things the police were looking into. She implied, if not explicitly said, that, like, that the information was coming directly from the police and she was in touch with them. She did forward me an article about, they're not finding any leads or whatever. Like an article from the Democrats saying, not much new on this case. So she, one, led me to believe that she was in regular communication with the police. Let me stop you there for a second. Yeah. Because now you found out or learned what to the contrary, that she had invoked after giving her statement and never contacted the police again. Okay, but she was representing to you that you felt that she was representing to you that she was in communication with law enforcement, and here's the leads that they're following. Yes. And if she was gaining that information through her counsel and then communicating it or passing it along to you, would that have been the same thing, really, or no? Because the investigation I'm asking is all three of those investigations are accurate, and I don't know that they would have been public information. So my question is, if she had gotten the information from her lawyer and then passed it on to you, even though she was supposed to be quiet, I don't know the source of her information, but she implied to me that it was with the police. And you drew to the conclusion that she was not in communication at all in any way, shape, or form. No, I don't think I drew that conclusion. I learned that she'd stopped speaking to the police after she gave the statement when she was invoked her right to counsel. Okay. But when she told me about these investigations, she said the police think. She didn't say my lawyer is telling me. And so I feel that she was trying to get me to believe that she was in communication with the police directly and that these were the leads that were investigating at the time. Okay. That's what I think. Okay. So do you know when you realized that or recognized it? I think it would have had to be when the trial started happening, so I think that's 2019. Okay, you said that that wasn't a factor in the relationship coming to an end in 2017? No, because I don't think I realized then that she had invoked, but I did believe that she was doing a number of behaviors to protect her family from being held accountable for the murder, that once the probable cause affidavit was released implicating her brother and her mother, that is when I believed that her brother and mother were involved. And after that, meaning once you read the probable cause affidavit implicating Donna and Charlie, that's when you developed or adopted the belief that they were involved? That's right. Okay. And based on what? I guess what supported, anyone can believe anything. You can choose to believe whatever it is that you want. But was it supported by something that had happened or occurred that you observed? Well, one, I found that, I think if I remember correctly, the probable cause affidavit contained information about the payment being made and how the payment was made to the hitman. I think it also contained information about, like, speaking in code. I think it also contained information about, like, the bump and behavior after the bump. And then that combined with my personal knowledge of, them, Charlie having a whole lot of money that he liked to throw around, and the family's hatred of Dan, combined with how protective Donna and Charlie were over Wendi, combined with some of my observations about Wendy's behavior, like particularly the statements she made after the murder, but also her, like what I would characterize as a lack of curiosity about who did it. Okay, and I kind of interrupted you there, and that brings us full circle back to what we were talking about. You said, number one, that she was telling you that when you would ask what's going on with it in your circles, that she had responded by saying, here are the avenues that they're running down. But I interrupted you there, and there was something else, I think, chronologically, that you were going to mention there. I mean, other things, I guess, that made you suspect or disagree or disapprove of Wendy's support of her family? I mean, let's figure out what time we're at, because if we're at sort of the year after, but before the probable cause affidavits, I can only say that she was not expressing sort of like stress or curiosity about who did it. And she told me that the police think it's these things. Then after that, around, I would say, a year after the murder, I asked one more time and she told me, Sarah, most murders are solved within the first 48 hours. And at that point, I was a senior supervising attorney at the public defender's office. I was carrying a caseload of exclusively homicides. And although that's true that most murders are solved within the first 48 hours, I had many cold cases. I had many, 10-year cases, 12-year cases, And I also was really aware that this wasn't most murders, at least from my understanding. What's the significance of her saying that? Most cases are solved within the first 24 hours. It means to me, I've given up hope that it will be solved. Okay. And that felt like she was trying to get me to stop asking about it.
Hello.
Hi.
I think we need to get another chair for me.
Yes. Okay, mentor lawyer is going to be joining us to read the questions portion of the transcripts.
So let me take this
Okay.
chair. I guess you get the other one. Hello, everybody. So Alex Morris was probably my best friend in law school, and he's the one asking the questions. So I'm gonna have the honor of reading his questions. Where are you
Okay.
at? Where are you at?
Right here.
Okay, so we are. And by the way, I was listening. You're doing a terrific job.
Thank you.
So I would say though, because you're using the same voice for the whole thing, if you can say question, answer, so people know when who's talking. I'm only gonna do a few minutes, guys. So hi everybody. Okay, so we're on line
Here,
20. Okay, so I just say okay.
And that felt like she was trying to get me to stop asking about it. She was trying to get me to stop. Yeah, that's what I believe. I believe that that was the purpose of that statement.
Okay, so advance us forward to anything else that may have been strange about her behavior or.
Sorry, it's a little tricky without questions, but yeah, let me try to go to the next thing. Give me 1 second. Okay, so then about a year after the homicide, her tone talking about it shifts from, like, I'm in a lot of fear over my safety, my boy's safety, I'm terrified, I'm like, I feel like a refugee, I feel like my clients, to a tone that I would describe as crass and inappropriate. So, for example, she would say, Danny got whacked.
Okay.
And I thought,
But let me make sure that I got the correct understanding. So immediately after the murder, and you said for about a year's period of time, she's actively expressing fear for herself as well as fear for her children.
yes,
Meaning, I do not know who did this. I'm scared that somebody's coming for us too.
absolutely yes.
Okay, and so if we take that out a year, then we are to the point of July of 2020 of 2015. I'm not suggesting that it from month, but you said says inaudible, so I just had to skip a word. That there is a change that happens. Is Are we at about the right time period, or do you think that it is later or earlier?
No, I think it's around there, but this isn't going to be one of those things I can really pin down, because it's not like it happened along with a holiday or along, a birthday or something.
No, but because it's tone and demeanor and voice inflection and things like that.
Yes, but I'll say after the dust settled and some time passed, the time I think is about a year, her tone shifted.
But using your phrase, the dust had settled,
That's right. That's right, yeah.
so her tone shifts to inappropriate things, to
I thought it was a crude way to speak about the man's death.
no question. Any other examples?
Not that I remember. No, I don't have any other examples.
And so it shifts from being scared. and protective to, I don't know what. What's a good verbalization of her overall demeanor then?
I think a little bit crude and crass is how I would describe it. Those are my words.
Okay, and that's based on one example, the whack.
Uh huh. And then I believe it was used on more than one occasion, but I definitely remember it on at least one occasion.
That term.
Yes.
Okay, anything beyond Danny got whacked that, in your view, shifted her behavior or demeanor into a category of being crude and crass?
No, no.
Okay, so that really gets us to, summer of 2015, 2017. You said was the end of the relationship. Are there,
Yeah, but there were a few things in between, right? When the probable cause affidavits hit,
sorry, right?
she called me at work and she said, when the arrest, sorry, this is before the probable cause affidavit, but when the first two arrests were made,
Right.
she called me at work and she said, Sarah, I'm shaking. And I said, what's going on? She said, arrests have been made in Danny's murder. And I said, that's wonderful. That's so good. You should be relaxed. You're safe. This is good. And she said, what if my crazy brother Charlie hired a hitman? And I said, that's your problem. And
Well, the probable cause affidavit intimated that as being the case, did it not?
no, I think this is pre the probable
Let's go
cause.
back a second. I want you to read this a little bit one more time.
Oh, okay.
So, what did she say? Okay, start from she said and slow it down and a little louder because this is
Okay.
important, guys. This was the cliffhanger we were planning
Mm-hmm.
yesterday.
Okay.
So, read that again.
She said, arrests have been made in Danny's murder. And I said, that's wonderful. That's so good. You should be relaxed. You're safe. This is good. And she said,
And this is Wendi, right?
yeah,
Wendi said, you can read it.
what if my crazy brother Charlie hired a hitman? And I said, that's your problem. And hold on.
Well, the probable cause affidavit intimated that as being the case, did it not?
No, I think this is pre the probable cause affidavit containing Charlie and Donna. But right when two arrests have been made, I think that happened before. But the affidavits containing the names of Charlie and Donna happened shortly after that.
Hmm. So, she says to you, what if my brother Charlie hired a hitman?
And I said that's his problem.
Meaning Charlie's, not hers?
Yeah, right. I did not believe it was in any way possible that Wendi could have been involved in this.
Okay.
So during this conversation, and so she said something about they're asking me to give a statement. And so I told her to give a statement. I said, when you gave a statement earlier, it really cleared the air. It helped you to, so that everybody knew that you had nothing to hide and no involvement. And I think you should do that again. Now, I'm a criminal defense attorney. I practiced for many years. I've never given a client the advice to go ahead and give a statement after you're
Was kind of wondering, I was,
I've never done that. I promise you, I have never done that.
why would you give that advice to your best friend?
Because I thought that she was being sincere. I thought that she would be believed, and I thought it would clear the air for her in the quickest way possible, and I did not think that there was a chance she could have been involved in it. And I thought her very best move is to prove in the court of public opinion, not the court of law, public opinion, that she's not involved in this. And so being open and forthcoming in my mind was the best way to do that.
Friendship advice, not necessarily legal advice, huh?
I would never give it to a client, but
You know.
but you only know this. You only get clients who give statements and the bad things happen, right? The arrest happens. You don't hear from the people who give a statement and they're absolved of any suspicion, right? That you don't that that case doesn't come to your desk as an attorney because it doesn't become a case. So I believe that she was being sincere and truthful, and that especially with her suspicion clouding around her brother, right? That would only happen because she was now telling me she suspects her brother or.
Wait a minute. Hang on just a second. Because a moment ago, we were talking as if none of this information about Charlie was available.
It wasn't. It wasn't.
But when you said when suspicion is clouding around her brother, what suspicion?
From her phrase, she wouldn't say, "What if my crazy brother Charlie hired a hitman?" if there wasn't some suspicion in her mind that Charlie has something to do with it.
Okay, fair.
Or could right? I don't I don't know, but I don't have independent reason to believe that Charlie was involved. She brought it up. Okay,
I'm sorry. Okay, so
so I told her to go ahead, say you weren't involved and
were you clear on who was asking for a statement?
no, no.
I mean, do you know whether it was law enforcement, the media, a deposition? Do you have any idea?
No.
Okay.
No.
But she's asking you a question of they're asking me to give a statement and I'm not sure whether I should or am I not going to was basically
It was, I don't know whether I should, and I feel now that she was dissatisfied with my answer, kind of.
dissatisfied with my answer.
Mhm.
Okay, I didn't hear you say with. Okay. Okay.
Prompting me to say, don't do it. And I think the fact that I was a defense attorney, this was my belief. I think she felt that I would likely tell her not to talk because that's what defense attorneys do and should do.
Okay, and so I guess what precipitated out of that?
Nothing in the very short term, the phone call ended. I told her not to be afraid, that things are going to work out and it's going to be okay. Sometime thereafter, Charlie and Donna are implicated when, in a probable cause affidavit, she does email me to ask to give a statement on behalf of the family. Wendi asked me to give a statement, saying that the family is innocent.
Okay.
And I declined doing that. I said I would not do that.
Do you know when?
I have the email, so I could send it to the state and they would send it to you if you want.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, was she asking you that after Donna's arrest or after Charlie's?
No, 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 no. I haven't Donna's arrest only happened recently and I haven't been in touch with them since 17. It was after Donna and Charlie had been named in the affidavit
Okay.
as being involved and I said, I don't want to be I knew too much about the marriage and I don't want to be, I'll then become part of Discovery and I just wanted to keep you safe. I don't think it would be really useful for if I get asked about the acrimonious divorce, I don't think that's like really useful for you, or something like that. Like I just said it's better for you if I'm not part of this, is what I said.
So I guess,
So I did not give a statement.
are there any other circumstances then after that example between the end of the friendship?
Yes, there are.
Okay, what else you got?
So I was living quite far from work in the year before the separation, and so sometimes I would spend the night at friends' houses and that were close to my work. And so Wendi very generously and kindly invited me to spend the night at her place on South Beach. And we were getting ready for bed and she said something offhanded like poor Charlie's having panic attacks. And I said that statement really stopped me in my tracks because it was like I felt like a very clear example of her trying to get others to believe that Charlie wasn't involved. And so I asked her, I said, Wendi, is believing in Charlie's actual innocence a prerequisite of this friendship? And she said no.
Okay, now let me, before I read this question, this is the last question I'm going to read. I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
So you can decide if you want to keep going all the way or just going to split it into two.
Right.
There's a chance I could come back later. We can read some more
Okay.
together. Anyway, okay. See you, everybody. I'm going to go. This is the last question from Alex Morris, and I'm going to read. Okay. I guess okay. I guess what's unfair about that?
It felt like she believed that Charlie was involved, and like there's nothing unfair about it. The significance of that statement to me is that she was okay with me believing that her brother was involved. And if I believed that my brother was innocent of a murder, but my friend believed that they were guilty, the friendship is over. You can't believe that my brother is guilty of a crime he's not guilty of and still be my friend. So I believe that Wendi, and based on the other statements that she had made to me in the course of this time period, I believe she was well aware of her brother's involvement in this case. And so when she later said he had nothing to do with it, I would never believe that my brother has. There's no possible way. It's impossible. That's not. What do you think that she knew of Charlie's involvement if he's involved? I mean, what? That was a question, by the way. Answer. Because she said, what if my crazy brother Charlie hired a hitman? I think that meant that she knew her crazy brother Charlie hired a hitman. Question. Okay. Answer. So that's, I believe that she knew that he was involved, and the fact that she was okay with me believing that he was involved, that we could still be friends if I believe Charlie is involved. To me, it confirms that she accepted Charlie's involvement, but subsequently has given statements that it's impossible that he was involved. Question. Okay, I mean, so she's questioning you, and I guess questioning out loud, what if my brother was involved in this? You take it to mean that she believed her brother to be involved, not just a question of what if he was involved. And then later on in time, you take expectation, you take exception to her saying, "I don't think that it was possible that my brother was involved in this." That's right. Question: You see those as conflicting? I do I see a conflict? Question: You see those as conflicting statements? No, 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 I don't. I think that those statements. Oh, I see. The statement, what if my brother Charlie was involved? To me, it meant she has a belief or a strong suspicion that her brother Charlie was involved, right? Right. That's what that means to me. Yeah. And subsequently, it wasn't my family. Right. Question. Right. So you take the exception to that those statements are in conflict, and that's among the reasons. Answer. That's right. That's right. Question. Okay. Answer. Yeah. Question. But that does not have anything to do with the end of the relationship in 2017. That's just something that brings you to the table now in terms of. Answer. No, it does. It does have something to do with it because I felt like she was trying to protect her family. She was aware of her family's involvement but trying to get other people to believe that her family wasn't involved. So part of that question, what involvement did she say that her family had other than the question of what if Charlie hired a hitman? Answer. None other than there was no other involvement that she said her family had, but that question to me meant she either believed or strongly suspected Charlie was involved. And then I took exception to asking me to give a statement to the media saying the family is innocent. I took exception to that, and I also took exception to this. My poor brother Charlie is having panic attacks, as though he should be the object of sympathy in this circumstance. Question. I've got to conclude. Forget about Charlie for a minute, but I can have you withdraw the conclusion. I can have you draw the conclusion then that Donna is guilty or the Adelsons in general are guilty of doing something? Answer, yes, I have. Question, what are they guilty of doing? Answer, conspiring to murder Dan Markel. Question, okay. Answer, and that's not all the Adelsons. Donna, Charlie, and Wendi, in my opinion, are all guilty of that crime. Answer. Question. Okay. Answer. And soliciting somebody to kill him. Question. You would agree with me that your opinion is based on what you read in probable cause affidavits? Answer. Yes, sir. Question. Also, rumor, newspaper articles, general information that's out in the public domain? Answer. Let me say what I observed personally. Police reports, trial testimony. That is where I'm basing my opinion on. Question, okay. And answer, I don't think I'm basing my opinion on rumors. Question, okay. You're basing it on trial testimony or police reports or things of that nature? Answer, sworn testimony and my own observations. Question, okay. And but you've utilized those things in order to arrive at your opinion? Answer, that's right. Question, you would agree that you don't have all of the information, the depositions, you didn't watch all of the trial, did you? Or trial, should I say? There have been 4 of them now. Answer, there have been 3. Question 3, I'm sorry. Answer, and I believe I have watched all of them. Question, okay, and then the court's ruling on the evidence and things of that. Answer, I wouldn't see like voir dire and the pretrial motions. I wouldn't see that wasn't streamed. So, question, okay. Answer, but everything, all of the trial testimony, opening and closing arguments, I'm a defense attorney. And it's something that touched my life in a very personal way and really affected my sense of safety in the world. I was very, very impacted personally by this case. Question, okay, but the opinions that you've arrived at, in one sense, it would be like a juror. You're watching or listening to the evidence, correct? Answer, yes. Question, all right. And in another sense, you've got a personal, not investment, but you've got a personal viewpoint of this where you had a relationship for a lengthy period of time and that relationship came to an end? Answer, yes. Question, but beyond those factors of Wendy's behavioral changes or statements or things that she asked or said, there's not any additional evidence that you have or that you've gained through personal investigation or anything? Answer, not that I can remember. As far as I can remember, I have told you what I know. Question, so you sent an email to Wendi that says, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Did Wendi respond to that? Answer, yeah, it wasn't I don't want to be friends with her. It's just I need to take space from this friendship for own sort of mental health and my own, journey. She sent a really kind response back, just like, take the space you need, my friend. And then I think over the next year she probably sent either 2 texts or 2, I think I heard from her twice, either by text or email, sort of saying, hey, I miss my friend, and I didn't respond. Question. Okay, yeah. If you could forward that email, and I don't know if you have the text or not, but that would be great if you do. Answer. I don't even know if I have, like, sort of follow up emails. I don't remember. I do know that I do believe that I have the email saying I need space and her response. I believe I have those. Question. So, how did you become a witness in this case? How did your name come to the attention of anyone? Answer. So after the last trial, I saw Phil Markel's victim impact statement on. I watched it and I was moved to tears. It was very, very sad for the Markels. I hadn't realized how old they had become. For some reason in my head they were just frozen as much younger people. But I didn't realize like they're hovering around 80. And the fact that Phil spent so much time talking about the grandparent alienation and how they don't have a meaningful relationship with the children, it made me feel really awful. And I knew I had been following the grandparent legislation, and I knew that if they were to prove some sort of civil liability, that they might have a shot at court ordered meaningful visitation. And so I talked to some people I really respect, some mentors in my life, and I said, is that, if I were to provide information, do you think it would put the Markels in a position to petition for meaningful visitation? And I talked to, one of these people is a lawyer who went to Harvard. One of these people is a lawyer who went to Yale. They're 2 of the smartest people I know, and they said, yeah. It's, of course I knew that the minute you say anything, you can become part of a criminal trial. And that was not my goal. I certainly don't want to be part of a criminal trial, but I knew that that was a possibility. And so I felt like if I didn't say anything, I'm one, not helping the Markels who deserve help. Question. Well, who did you say something to? Answer. Mr. Snyder. I sent an email to Mr. Snyder. Question. Who's Mr. Snyder? Answer. The lawyer. Orrin Snyder, the lawyer that represents the Markels. Question. Oh, okay. And so the email went to that him or answer him. Question. Do you have a copy of that by chance? Answer. I'm sure I do. Question. If you could forward that also, that'd be great. Answer. Absolutely. Question. So pick up from there. Did they contact you or what happened from there? Answer. Yeah, he contacted me back and we arranged a phone call and I told him the information I had and nothing happened for a couple months and then he contacted me and said, I'm giving your name to Georgia Kappelman. Okay. And that's my origin story here. Question: did anybody from Miss Kappelman's office reach out to you, or, I mean, what happened there? Answer: again, months passed, and Jason Newland, the investigator. Question: okay. Answer: contacted me and said, we'd like to talk to you about what you know. And so at some point, we arranged a call and we discussed the same things that you and I are discussing. Question: okay, do you remember when this was? Answer: a few months ago, maybe May. May sounds right. April, May sounds right. Sorry, you're just freezing up a bit. Question: yeah, I broke up there. It would have been well after Donna's arrest. Answer: well after Donna's arrest. Well after Donna's arrest. Question: okay, and so he spoke with you in May or June of this year? Answer: Jason Newland was on the phone and Georgia Kappelman was also on the phone. Question: okay. Answer: I think it was April or May. I could consult my day planner to give you the date, but I think I could piece together a date for you if needed. Mr. Morris: sure. I mean, maybe you can communicate that forwarding through whatever you do to the state. That would be fine. If you don't mind, let me take a 2 minute, 3 minute break and check with Mr. Rashbaum on anything I've missed and that sort of thing. And I'll be right back with you. The witness: okay. I'm going to stop right there because the rest is 20 more pages, I believe. Yeah. The rest is enough for a part 2. And if you have seen yesterday's live, I mean, it's up. You can check out yesterday's live for sure. It has the beginning of the transcripts as well as when I read the motion. But either way, I'm going to upload a video containing both pieces so you don't really have to look around for it if you don't want to. But yeah, I'm going to stop right here. So we're on page 43. I will continue the end of page 43 all the way to 64. Oh no, it ends on... Ooh. Okay, it ends on page 53, so I actually have 10 pages left. Should I just do that now? No, people are already leaving. I'm gonna do that another day. Okay. Thank you guys for watching. I will end it now. Enjoy your day, and there definitely should be another video soon. Bye.